What's up, homies of the internet? Lugnuts.Guapo coming at you from the comfort of my own little studio, and we're gonna talk Sporster S. What's all wrong with it, and what's all okay, or maybe even good with it. Roll that intro. Woo! Welcome back to the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and get that ding 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 ding. Subscribe, that little notification bell, go ahead and click that. And well, if you disagree or agree with me, drop them comments below. Anyways, obviously I'm not the first one or the last one that will make a video about the Sporster S, and I know that there's a lot of, I want to say controversy, but there's really not much to be controversial about. I mean, we all knew that the Sporster was going to eventually change, but you can't change the fact that people don't like the change. The Sporter's been around for a long time, and then the current platform has been like, what? A little over 2 decades. So we got the new Sporster S, which I wish I could show you some of my own footage that I got from our GM that went and test rode out in California with Mr. Matthew Laidlaw, and but I can't because I'm a Harley-Davidson employee, and if you saw my last video, you know that I can't do anything about it until Harley-Davidson corporate decides that I can post, even though everybody else that's not an employee already posted all their stuff. So I'm probably gonna use Harley's own footage because that's all I can do. Alright, let's get into it. So what all is wrong with the Sporster S? Well, let's start number one with the competing market. Well, as you may know, the Sporster currently is supposed to compete with the Indian Scout, and if you have a brain, you know that they're not even nowhere near close in any regards. Maybe there's both smallish motorcycles, but about that's it. That's all they have in common. The Sporster is a Sporster. You don't buy a Sporster because you want something fast, unless you're doing a 120 horsepower kit or whatever the case may be. But you buy a Sporster for what it is. It's an antique. It's vintage. It's the heart of a Harley-Davidson, right? So what should have Harley actually done with the new Sporster S that I think they did poorly is that Indian, their best-selling model is you guessed it, an Indian Scout. I get to see all these little reports because of marketing purposes, and the Indian Scout is their best-selling motorcycle, period. And Harley has nothing to compete with that. And the Scout is kind of like in between, like a Sporster and the Sato. So it's in this weird space, and I think that's why it does so well. But with that said, that's where I think this Sporster S should have been at from the beginning, and should have never been at the market that they're currently competing in, which we'll discuss here shortly, which is part of this topic. Is they should have made a Sporster that was competitive with the Scout, because that's our number one competitor is Indian. So why wouldn't you make a motorcycle that would A, was competitive in price with an Indian Scout, and B, actually competed with the Indian Scout? Because after all, it's a Sporster S, and Harley's been trying to make it look like the Sporster competes with the Indian Scout. Yeah. So with that said, let's talk about the motorcycles that it's actually supposed to compete with, and that is the Indian FDR, the Triumph Bonneville, the M109R, the Ducati Diavel, BMW R9T, and of course, the infamous Yamaha VMAX. Well, I've ridden a lot of those motorcycles, and they're all cool, but the problem is when was the last time you actually saw one of these things? I mean, I guess the M109, I've seen maybe 2 or 3 in the DFW area. I've seen one Triumph Bobber because I sold it to a friend, and maybe a Ducati Diavel? I see it more on Instagram than I do on the street. It's a market that's not very successful, and you're trying to compete with a market that's not selling. So what's the point of making a motorcycle that's supposed to compete with all these brands with their models that are not selling? It doesn't make any sense. I've had many discussions with many people in the industry, and some people say, well, Harley's just trying to kind of pump in some, something into that market to make that market come afloat. But why invest in that when you already have a market that sells a lot, which is the Sporter and the Scout? I don't know. Okay, so now that we've discussed one, it's not competing directly with the Scout, which I think it should. 2, it's competing in a segment of the market that is not selling as it is, and now we move to number 3. One of my biggest gripes with this motorcycle is that they came out with the premium model. This is everything on this motorcycle that it could possibly come with, and this is like top of the line according to Harley-Davidson. And let's be honest, it's actually pretty cool, like the Tft Display. Well, we'll get into all the cool stuff, but it is top of the line. which is cool, great, fantastic. But now this thing is like 15 grand, and why come up with a premium model first? It's the same thing that happened with the Livewire. The Livewire is supposed to be this premium model that they were eventually gonna come up with other models that was, followed it, and then therefore we could sell a lot of electric motorcycles. But instead, they want to get their R&D money back, so they priced it really high because it's a premium model, and people weren't gonna buy into it just yet because there's not a lot out there that's like it. So why do this with Sporster S if you want people to try out this new motor, the Revolution Max, which is, we'll get to that. If you want people to try out the Revolution Max on a completely different platform, something that's light, I think it's like 500 and some pounds, why come up with a premium model first and make it 15 grand? Now, granted, the price is actually not off for the segment that it's trying to compete with, but you should have come out with something that was, I don't know, 10, 12 grand maybe? Something closer to the scale, get people excited for the new Revolution Max on such a small frame. So with that said, should've, could've, would've come out with the lower model that was super cheap that anyone could buy and get them excited as they build up, just like this with the Dyna Lowrider S. First it was the Dyna Lowrider, people loved it, Harley saw that, and then they came out with a 2-year production of the Dyna S, and it sold like crazy, and now they're going for stupid money, like 18, 20 grand for a used model. That's how they should have done it in my opinion, but I might be wrong. Let me know in the comments below. Numero 4. They put forwards on this motorcycle. It should have come with mids. Listen, I get it, forwards are cool, it kind of goes with the style of the motorcycle for someone that's kind of in the cruiser market already, but you're already saying that this bike is supposed to compete like with the FTR and all these like performance looking motorcycles. Granted, there's some other motorcycles that have like forwards on them, but if it's supposed to be the S in Sporster, granted, it doesn't quite affect the motorcycle, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but people that are coming from, I don't know, a BMW R9T or an FTR and they want to jump into this motorcycle, the first thing that they're going to want is mids. Mids! And moving on to the last of the things that I have a gripe with this motorcycle, numero 5, number 5, is the solo seat design. I get it, the other motorcycles that it's supposed to be competing with, some of them are like solo riding motorcycles, but it doesn't seem like it left much of an option to put a passenger seat on that motorcycle. So if someone bought that bike, you're already like restricting them to like, hey, this is all you're gonna get. You ain't gonna be able to put a passenger on it. I mean, you could, but which now that I think about it, I'm actually not really sure. I should probably look at the P&A catalog before I put that in my notes. Maybe they're gonna be able to put 2 passengers on it, but I just don't see how, or it's just gonna be like a weird situation. But anyways, those are the 5 things that I absolutely dislike about this motorcycle, and let's move on to the things that I do approve of. Alright, the 5 things that I think they did right on this motorcycle is the Revolution Max comes at a number 1 because that engine is insane. I got to ride the Pan America out in California, and we beat the crap out of this motorcycle, and that motor just kept going without a hitch. That motor is absolutely impressive. It's amazing in everything that it does, and of course I wouldn't say detune, they say retune, because it's supposed to give you a more linear torque curve. And I mean, I haven't gotten a chance to ride it, to be honest with you, but my GM who did ride it says the torque is all there, and it's super smooth, and it has all this new technology like the independent variable timing that just does amazing things for this motorcycle. So the Revolution Max is the absolute bomb, and they did right by putting that in the new Sporster S. And now we move on to the number 2 situation, which we were talking about mid controllers and how they should put mid controllers from factory in this motorcycle, but they did not. But with that said, usually when you put forward controllers on any motorcycle, it limits your lean angle, which apparently it doesn't even matter on this motorcycle because they did a good job placing it to where it wouldn't affect the lean angle. Because if you want to make a sporty bike, you want something that can actually handle and lean side to side with no problem without scraping pegs, So kudos to Harley-Davidson for accomplishing that, although I still think they probably should have put mids on it. But that's a cool thing that they did, that they accomplished in that. Bravo, Harley-Davidson. Number 3 on my list is absolutely the inverted front end. Can't have a sporty motorcycle without an inverted front end, and that is actually one of the things that I absolutely loved out of my number 1 Sporster motorcycle with an Evo is the Roadster because of that inverted front end. It makes a huge difference. And I will say the one thing that I am curious about is, for example, when we took the suspension apart on a Lowrider S, a new soft Lowrider S, the internals of that inverted front end weren't as impressive as I thought they should be. And I had this discussion with one of the techs that works there. He has seen it all. He's been in the industry for 20 years. And it was very lackluster. So I'm just hoping that this is not like copying out by putting an inverted front end but cheap internals. And not that the Lowrider S doesn't handle great, it does great. The inverted front end does what it's supposed to do, but it's not what you would think it is. But that's my opinion, that's neither here nor there. Moving on, I keep looking into my notes, so I keep forgetting, so excuse me. Tft Display, that is my number 4 on this list. The Tft Display actually looks amazing, and it's clear, it's easy to use. I mean, even the interface on the Pan America is very straightforward, very easy to use. Some people might find it a little challenging, maybe, but the Tft Display on this one is actually really nice, and everybody that's actually ridden it has praised Harley-Davidson for this screen. It looks amazing, and honestly, there's a lot of bikes that should put that on that are currently in their lineup, but I get it, Harley-Davidson, they try to like keep that heritage and try to make everything as analog, I guess, or just old school as possible without staying behind. So that's one of the things for another video. Harley's just trying to keep up, at the same time keep the old stuff. And last but not least, their cooling system. This motor is obviously liquid cooled. I've ridden the Pan America multiple times. I absolutely love that motorcycle, but there's one thing that I absolutely hate, and if you're riding in shorts, which I'm not recommending that you should, just moving it around in shorts, that fan where it's placed, I mean, it just burns your left leg like crazy. And I was kind of concerned that the Sporster S was going to be something similar like that, but apparently it's even cooler than, and I don't mean like as in cool, like yeah, like cool, like cooler than the Pan America. And that's awesome. The thing that goes along with that is that exhaust, because I don't know if you've seen the video from Harley, like the pipe just sits so high, and when you're standing at a stop, that right leg, man, it's right on that pipe, and that little like flap that goes over from the rear fender is not like protecting anything. Like your leg is in front of that, and your leg leans on that pipe, but apparently they did some awesome installation or whatever design they did on there, because you cannot feel the heat of that pipe. I mean, obviously if you just like sit there for, I don't know, 5 minutes or more, I'm sure you'll eventually feel it. But apparently that's something amazing. I'm taking my GM's word for that, because again, I haven't ridden it personally, but I do give Harley kudos on that one, because that is something pretty neat, because Harleys are not known for being cool. And I mean, like, not like cool, like ooh, cool, you know. So those are the 5 things that I actually like about the Sportster. Let me know what you think about it. Drop your comments below. I'm really curious what you think about this motorcycle. If you're like biased, and we are biased to a certain extent, if you're like, no, it's the old Evo or nothing, like, I get it. Whatever, right? But we're talking about this motorcycle as it sits right now, what it competes with, what the price is, which honestly 15 grand for that motorcycle is actually not bad. I was just hoping they would, something that would compete with the Indian Scout, because that's the motorcycle that sells more from or more direct competition on the cruiser lineup. So let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, that notification bell, ping, 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 and yeah, drop them comments below. Got some, I don't know what I'm doing with my hand. I don't know what I'm doing with my hand.
I'm not sure what to do with my hands.
In the meantime, get on your Harley or on 2 wheels and get some wind therapy. Later.